Okay. Greetings, everybody. This is Stephanie with Women of AR, and we are here tonight for a debriefing of the 2023 USARA National Championship up at Smuggler's Notch in Jeffersonville, Vermont. And we're happy to have those of you who raced, those of you who didn't race, but are just curious about the race or AR in general. And we have in particular the winning all women's team of Feral Femmes. Yay. And that is Kit and Ashley. It looks like I'm not seeing Emily's name, so I think Emily's not able to join us tonight, but Kit and Ashley are going to talk to us about their experience at nationals, and hopefully we'll hear from some of you. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat box, and we'll try to make sure those get answered. But we will start with Kit and Ashley. Why don't you tell us how your team came together? I know that wasn't in the questions I said I was going to ask, so I'm throwing you a curveball right out of the bat, but I have a feeling you can handle this one.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Kit and I have been racing together since 2013. And we actually every year we usually change our team name. It's like a big thing that we do. So we usually race at least 1 or 2 races, and we just do a different team name every year. And then this year for nationals, up until nationals, I only raced a 12-hour was my maximum time. So I knew that I wanted to race nationals because it was in Vermont with Kit, and we were like, well, let's pull a team together. And something that we have felt really strongly about is all female teams and the magic that there is there, and just like creating more space, taking up more space, being a little more kind of like, I don't know, a part of the scene, I guess, in that way. So we were like, let's pick a name that we'll stick with. And our good friend Emily, who is one of the partners on Kit's other race team, has done a couple races and was interested. And we were like, Emily, this is the perfect vibe for the team. This is a good, a good crew. And so it kind of came together, and then it just sort of stuck. I don't know, Kit, if you'd add anything.
Well, I mean, in case not everybody knows us, we are married as well. So
that is true.
What we have found with us racing together with a number of 12-hour races and some shorter races too, is that we are the best teammates on the race course as well as in life. So I think we find it really rewarding to be out in the woods together, and we work super well together. I mean, it's my favorite time being in the woods with Ashley. So when Ashley said that she was interested in doing her first 24-hour race, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to say, and we both live in Vermont too. So that was also, kind of helpful to have it here and at home. And yeah, I was super excited to do this race with her.
Very cool. And so when you're racing, the two of you with Emily, what are your different team roles? Kit, I know you're an ace navigator. How do you all divide up the other responsibilities?
So I kind of took the lead on navigation, and we had a number of other roles. I mean, navigation never happens in a silo. So I always am relying on my entire team to be listening to the information that I'm giving out, and for them to give me information and input, as they are cognitively able or physically able. So one thing that I really rely on is somebody that is kind of the timekeeper. I know some teams do a lot of pace counting, but for me, I do a lot of kind of pace estimation. I'm like, so at this pace, we should get to this backstop or this, this point or this stream within, 4 to 5 minutes. So I'll kind of be telling somebody to start the stopwatch now. And so Ashley kind of took that role.
Yep.
We had Emily was really great with keeping us on food. And we actually tried something new this first time ever. I've usually done like a 1-hour food counter, and we did 30 minutes for food. And I think we're going to keep that with us. I know there's a question later on, but we're going to keep doing 30 minutes. Okay. Hey, food, if you haven't been thinking about it. So that was really helpful. Especially for me as a navigator, it's hard for me to take care of myself. So that was really helpful. Emily was really diligent with that.
So you're saying that you just did your reminder every 30 minutes, or you packed food in 30-minute increments, or both?
Reminders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reminder. And I think for me, it was really beneficial because I was not biting off more than I could chew. Literally. So sometimes when I'm like, oh, an hour's gone by, I got to shove, 200, 250 calories. And it messed with me over time. And I think this one having just, small increments of 100, 120 calories every 30 minutes was really helpful.
Yeah, and Emily was great because she was pretty persistent. So one of the things we'll talk about later, but like we wanted to stay on the move. And so sometimes it's hard to eat while you're on the move. And Em would be great about like, hey, it's super steep right now, but like everyone needs to eat like a bite. Or, like when we were stopping at to like use the dibbler, like Em would be like, grab whatever you need, like while we had this like 1 second while we're stopping. And so that was pretty great because sometimes the timer would go off and Kit and I would be like, yep. And then Emily would be like, I physically do not see you actually eating, which was very helpful.
Yeah.
You can't cheat on the food check-in.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to.
So I will say having her, as an addition to the team definitely brought a lot of value that we have been overlooking, with what her Ash and I kind of ignore sometimes. So
yeah.
Was this the first time you all raced with Emily?
It is. We do a lot of like activities and training days with so we knew that it would be a good fit going into the race, but we hadn't done an official, right? We haven't done it. Yeah, we hadn't done an official race with Emily yet.
Wow, good deal. So somebody asked, and you mentioned just now with the e-punch, somebody asked a question that kind of fits with that. So when you're doing races that use e-punch with the finger sticks, do you keep track of the CPs you've hit separately? And I know exactly what they're saying. You can, without that physical passport to see which ones you've been to, you can actually sort of forget, did we go to this point or not? And Megan is saying they had an incident in the middle of the night where they weren't sure and they disagreed over whether or not they had gone to CP 18. So do you all have a way of keeping track of that?
We were pretty communicative about it.
So Kit had the maps, the primary set of maps. I had all the clues. And then for part of it, I also had the dibbler. Em and I split the dibbler between the two of us. And then, so we would always be like at every single checkpoint, I would be like, this is checkpoint 23, right? And then Kit would be like, and then Emily would be like, yup, this is checkpoint 23. And then Kit would be like, yup, this is checkpoint 23, and be like, okay, great. And beep. And then we're on to the, the next thing. I will say while I am not our navigator, I'm very good at knowing when we have been somewhere, which is a perfect little strength for Kit because that is not a strength of hers. So
if I don't have the map with me, I have no idea where I am. I don't know if I've seen that thing before.
Yeah.
And Ash is very good at like, we were just here, or it works out well. But I think it's especially because there's no like punch. I remember asking Emily almost every time, did you hear it beep?
Yeah.
I think that was
our big stressor.
Like,
yeah.
Did it beep?
And I'll tell people just for your information. So with the finger sticks, it doesn't hurt to hit it twice. Like if you're not sure, you can hit it again. If it's within, it's usually like, I can't remember what the window is now. My memory's shit. But if it's within certainly a few seconds, if you're not sure, you can do it 2 or 3 or 4 times. If it's within a few seconds, it's only going to record that once. It's only really an issue based on the capacity of the finger stick. So if you're not sure at the start of the race, it never hurts to ask the race director. If they are providing your finger stick, ask them, how many punches does this hold? How many punches are in this race? And then you sort of know you've got this slush at the end. And so for this race, we were concerned about the capacity of finger sticks because of the number of checkpoints. But because the ABC trek did not use the finger stick, and Adventure Enablers had actually gotten some higher capacity finger sticks, it wasn't an issue. We didn't have any concerns about it. But you can always ask the race director because you don't want to punch it and then like keep doing multiple punches that are going to all record and not record over, because you can run out of room. So just people who aren't familiar with finger sticks, it's something good to know. If it's within a few seconds, it's just going to record it once, so you're fine. But it doesn't hurt to know what your little budget is of punches. So that's a great question. Let's talk about, and I know that some, I'll just add, I know some teams say that they actually will mark on their course instructions, the clue sheet, they'll mark off as they get to them. So that's another way to make sure, yeah, that you've got that. Okay. And so talk to us about, your strategy going into the race. Let's talk about sort of the big picture going into the race. They told you that this was going to be a really big course and you were going to have to make a lot of strategic decisions probably. Did you all go into it thinking, yeah, we think this is a course we're going to clear and let's set out that way? Or what was your thinking on it?
Yeah, we were pretty clear we weren't going to clear the course from the onset, which actually works in our favor because it gives us a lot more strategy to play around with and figure out what checkpoints to think we might clear, what checkpoints we want to drop. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the size of it and then knowing our goals as a team when we came in were really to first and foremost have fun, work well as a team, and then be sustainable, especially with it being Ashley's first 24. It was Emily's second 24-hour race and or 24 plus. So, we didn't want to go into this with depletion of capacity before we had gotten what we wanted out of the race. And actually, when we looked at the maps and we started kind of digesting all of the information, we looked at that last trek going up the backside of Smugs and coming down the front side. And we, all three of us agreed, we want to do that trek. Like that's going to be the crux of the kind of the fun or the hard fun, that we really wanted to get to. So we made a lot of decisions around making sure that we got to that TA by 10 a.m. That's when, after map wheeling and kind of saying, how long do I think that we could possibly take to finish on time? And so that was our 10 a.m. cutoff, was a really conservative, but I think a good judgment cutoff for us. So that helped us to kind of then backtrack where are the places that are most valuable to get points and where does it make sense to drop. So like Sterling Forest on the bike, we just dropped immediately. We didn't even think, I didn't even map wheel anything. I didn't mark anything out. We were just not doing any Sterling Forest stuff.
So were you familiar with Sterling Forest area already? No, you can see from the map that
just the map, just the amount of elevation, and then knowing that it would be a lot of technical, and it'd be probably still at night. Yeah, we were thinking a lot of our strengths, and we were already covering 10, 11, 12,000 feet of elevation if we got to everything that we wanted to. And I think that given what we kind of knew about each other going into this race, we didn't want to add what Sterling Forest would have added to that.
Yeah. I think one of our goals was like to keep everything in that like that like hard enough bucket that you're still having a great time. And like all of Kit's, like all of our map prep was really, really intentional so that we were well organized going in. We had the points that we were like, we're for sure going to get all of these. Like we knew that first trek, we were like, these points are low hanging fruit. We need to get all of these in the first trek. That was like, we didn't even question that. And then looking at some of those places like Sterling Forest, where it was a lot of elevation gain. So it really would have like just fried the legs. Like, were there other points we could get that would be more valuable? And we got most of the ones in the individual O's, which in reflection, we wish we had gotten all of them, but because those were also kind of low hanging fruit. But and then knowing that we wanted to get to that trek, wanted to do all the mandatories, and we had some on that final trek that we were like, we added a few along the way because we felt so great at towards the finish. So I think that there were really intentional places where we dropped points where they were either big elevation or at night techie stuff that we knew we weren't going to clear it. And those were easy ones to say, these are the ones that we're going to leave behind.
And so when you first got all of the materials you were given, and there were a lot of maps, a lot of course instructions, supplemental maps, like what was your process for integrating all of that information and making those strategic decisions?
When I'm on point for nav, I am all the information that we can get on the maps or I color code a lot of things, like all checkpoints. I want to take my Sharpie neon marker, because the neon ones, by the way, they don't, on most maps, they don't cover up other information like elevation lines and topo lines. So I use Sharpie neons, and I highlight all of the CPs, and then I'm going in and I'm making route choices, and that's always my orange is my route choice or like options. Blue, anytime I have blue, it's a map change or supplemental map needs to be used, so we're doing a lot of marking on the maps. I map wheel biking routes, not usually trekking routes because we're moving slow enough for me to be able to measure. I'm just using my compass. But yeah, I'm map wheeling distances for the bike, especially at the end of the race. Like really important, because by the end of the race, if you don't have that information, your brain's fried. It's a lot harder to kind of estimate the distances, and so I almost recommend, especially for newer teams, to kind of start at the end of the race, get those last 2 maps completed, because we've run into some problems that way without having those ones finished, and only the first few.
We have indeed, yeah. And I think it was great because we broke up stuff. So we gave Em the race rules. So Em was reading those aloud. Kit was circling all the CPs. I was going through all of the clues, and we were like basically writing everything on the map so that as the race went on and the hours clicked by, we could look at the map and have all of our information there, which was really, really helpful. If you watched the video of me at one point, I thought that I lost our clue sheet and our dibbler in the middle of the night. So it would have been great to have all that stuff written down. If I had, I didn't, it was still around my neck, but in my mind,
literally
around my neck. But I had just taken off basically everything I was wearing and was so cold that I couldn't remember that I put it back on. So it would have been helpful had we lost that.
It's a good insight into how. Yeah, that was a good video, Steph. Thanks for getting that one.
Yeah, that's a highlight for sure.
Yeah. So how did you all keep up with your finger stick? He had it on a leash already, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it was on a leash, and I started that first track. I started with it around my wrist, and because we were kind of moving fast and just like holding it, like white knuckling it. And then as we got a little bit later in the race, we actually had with a special little, what is that brand? I don't even remember what.
Night Ease.
Like we had these little
Waterproof.
zipper waterproof pouches, and so
Usually for passports.
We were putting it in there for a little bit, like on the bike when I was just nervous about it flying away. We had it securely there with like a couple of carabiners.
Well, I don't know if anybody else ran into this problem, but there was at one point that I was like, Ash needed to eat. So I was like, okay, give me the dibbler, I'll go dib. And
I was so tangled in it.
It was tangled in the wrist compass and her wrist. It must have taken like 3 minutes to figure it out.
Yeah, we were running side by side, and I was like, I could just do this at this point, but it was a little bit of a fiasco.
So I like that we had a little separate pouch, and then
I wonder if anybody else sitting in can give some, if they were really happy with their finger stick management strategy. Maybe you can pop that in the comments, or feel free to unmute yourself and weigh in on a really good finger stick strategy. I'm kind of thinking, because the string that he has those is pretty long. Yeah, I like around my wrist, but I'm thinking maybe if you had one of those, the little spring loaded, that you can use to cinch down, like a drawstring bag to cinch down. I wonder if you had one of those that you could just pop on there, and then you could cinch down on your wrist.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And sometimes, like in the orienteering race, we did an orienteering race this summer, and it goes around your finger. So there's an additional, which actually is so nice, because then you have it, but you're also, it's a little less. I like being able to see it and be in contact with it the whole time. So you,
the elastic around your finger, like we do in orienteering, is great, but then you also want to have an elastic leash that comes back to your wrist, because they pop off your finger in a heartbeat. It's shocking how quickly that happens, especially if you're wearing gloves and you don't know it. So yeah, something that keeps it attached to you. Chelsea says, we secured it in its own pouch on my backpack. No other things went in and out of that chest pouch. So somebody else might have punched, but they would hand it back to me. The punch czar. I like it.
We felt stressed also, Chelsea. That was probably my most stressed part.
It's a lot of, we've heard teams over the years complain about using e-punch because of having to keep up with the finger stick, but I'm like, well, it's really no worse than having to keep up with a passport, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Either way, you got to hang on to something. Yeah.
Yeah. Kid's running for something. I'm not totally sure she's running for, the pouch.
I wanted to show the
She wanted to
pouch.
show our pouch. Sorry, I don't know. We're a little
It's
disorganized.
a small little pouch for a passport, and it's got two little things for a carabiner, and you can just move it from one person
Yeah.
to the next, and it's always in its own pouch, and you can see
Yeah,
it.
kind of like what
It's kinda
Chelsea's
see-through.
saying.
Yeah, exactly what Chelsea's saying, but we found that to be like really, it changed our anxiety level.
Yeah.
Look better.
Kara says she had the string attached to her backpack chest strap, so she knew she wouldn't drop it and then would tuck it into a chest strap pocket. Yeah, I do something like that with a compass a lot. So yeah, those are all good ideas. My main thing is just attach it to your body somehow.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. So time management. So it sounds like from the start you knew you would drop Sterling Forest and you ended up actually ahead of your goal. So do you write on the maps, it sounds like probably where you need to be at what time to make decisions about more drops or adding on?
We did. So there was the recommended cutoff time. So we took those cutoff times, we had those on the map, but then we did our own math and decided what cutoffs we felt best about. We were like getting to that last trek, like if it was literally the last thing we did. So we had worked backwards pretty conservatively and figured out where we needed to be, even if we were, because we just also didn't know, like I didn't know how I was going to feel. We didn't know what the vibe was going to be. So we made some very conservative estimates on the back end so that even if things were not amazing, we could still be moving at a pace that felt like we could get to where we needed to be, which worked out great because then we had more time. We felt fresh. We got a few more points.
Yeah. So I'll just add for anybody who might watch this who didn't do the race and know, one of the really significant things about getting to the last transition area and doing this last big trek they're talking about, we called it the monster trek during all of our course preparations and vetting and things, the monster trek. Teams who did that were going to rank ahead of any team who didn't do that, basically, because it was a big enough effort and a big enough part of the race that the race director really wanted to make sure that there was no way that a team could sort of strategize dropping that leg, but getting enough points ahead of that they could place ahead of someone who went and attempted that leg and maybe didn't get all the points or whatever. So he wanted that to be sort of a mandatory thing for teams, that if teams did that, they would rank ahead of anybody who didn't do that. And so that's why it was kind of important from the outset to decide for your team whether your goal was to try to get there so that you would rank with these teams who had done the long course, or if you were going to be satisfied to get to the TA, I guess one before that. And then you could decide to go back and you would be on a short course. You'd still be an official finisher, but on a short course. Yeah, so you all knew from the get-go that you would do the long course. So how long, you said 10 a.m. was your target to get to that last TA. So you were giving yourself 5 hours to get the mandatories over the mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what time did you end up getting there?
8 a.m.
Closer to 8.
Yeah, 8 a.m. And then we were like, we're gonna be so fast out of here. And we were pretty like, I think we were like a little leisurely at that state, but we were still pretty fast about getting out on foot.
I think we moved just
Did we
fine,
move fast? I can't remember.
We made a lot of decisions
Okay.
to drop a lot of weight because one thing that we all kind of overpacked food. So we did have a lot of extra weight, and we could leave stuff with the bike in that last stage that we didn't need, as long as it fit on the bike in a bike bag.
Yep.
And I had plenty of space in some of my bike bags. So we were a little, did some diligence.
Yeah, we had eaten a lot of our bike food, so we just shoved the extra food that we had in our packs. And I'll say one thing we didn't talk about, but we knew individually what our strengths and weaknesses were, and we knew collectively what they were going to be. And Kit is pretty top tier on foot, and so she actually carried we packed all of our food in 6-hour bags. And so Kit actually carried a 6-hour bag of food for me, and I think she carried a 6-hour bag of food for Em. And so that allowed Emily and I to have basically like running vests on with all of our food squirreled here that we were actively eating, and then our additional water pouches, and then have a 6-hour bag on our back. So we didn't have, we had a lot less weight, which was helpful for those foot
Finish
sections
the rest of this.
for Em and I.
You know, I think with training for Worlds and with my kind of background fitness and stuff, it made sense for me to take most of the weight, and I think that was really helpful.
And so you had 2 extra hours. So what points did you end up getting on the monster truck? And did you go for any points then other than the mandatory?
It made us feel more confident that we could go for those points that were
Yeah.
in line. I mean, there was a little extra elevation to get the second one, 41 maybe. But yeah, they were on board. They were like, hey,
Yeah.
I showed them, I was like, you know, it's almost directly to the mandatory points. We just have to add a little extra this and that.
Little extras
We
and
did
that.
it.
And there was one point at the very end, there was one more point that we had kind of wanted to get. But we we call it a moment of pause. If anyone did the knoll on a ridge, we felt like that was that was a little confusing because there was a lot of knolls and there was a lot of various ridges. And so we had climbed up and done that one. And then we were having such a great time. It's always that thing where you're like, we want to end on a high and we want to have a great time. And so we had a small concern about what's that line of pushing it. And one of the things, we didn't say this, but also another goal of ours, every race that Kit and I do together, every race we have done over the last 10 years, we are sprinting to the finish line, like hauling it. And I am
Not every.
Pretty much every race we've ever done, we have had to sprint to the finish line. I'm so stressed and losing my mind. And so I said for this race, I was like, this is 30 hours. I was like, there will be no like panic, stress, final moments, like getting to I didn't want to, and Emily in her last race hadn't come in under the time cutoff. So that was a really big goal of hers as well, was being like, we need to come in on time. Like we're coming in on time. And so
we left 2 hours on the clock.
Yeah, we left a couple hours on the clock and we left one checkpoint that we had wanted to get, but we ran down from there. We ran to the finish from there and we felt great and the vibes were perfect. Everyone had an amazing, amazing time. And so it felt okay. Yeah.
It was time to stop getting points when we stopped getting points for team strategy.
Yep. We were into the candy reserves at that point.
And so let's talk about the portages. The portages in this race were kind of a big deal. These were some significant portages. Did you all have wheels?
We did.
Oh, thank you, Amazon.
We had a panic purchase at the last minute because Kit and I did a GMARA race, the same org that hosted this race, and we had a very long portage, equivalent to the portages that we had in this race, basically, and we did not have portage wheels, and we were very unhappy. So we knew, and that's not like brute strength is not our strength, I guess. So we knew that we didn't want to be tanked from carrying those huge, very heavy boats unnecessarily. So
this some perks of Amazon here is that they did come within those 2 days.
Yep,
we got them the day before.
Yeah, I will say that I feel like
and they were necessary for us, I think, to have a good time.
Yeah, I do feel for teams that couldn't get portage wheels in time. I feel like knowing those portages, I feel like it would have been really great to give more of an equitable opportunity for everyone to get wheels that wanted wheels, because I feel like that our vibe would not have been immaculate if we had to carry those boats.
But here's what I will say, because this one, I mean, first off, she completely exceeded my expectations. I say that with so much love because I had so much high expectations for her also, all these things that is wrapped up in, couplehood and teammate.
Racing with your wife. Yeah.
So, but especially on the portage, when we had to go down those ditches and back up, or when we had to get out of the water and go up, I've never seen this quite before. The grit, she would run up the hill, just pull the whole boat up herself. And I'm like, I can help, and I'm like slipping down the hill trying to help. And she's already got it like halfway up. She was throwing that thing around. Like, I think she could have thrown it over her head and portaged it.
If I had to, could it have happened? Maybe. I am a rugby player, so I will say that I do come bearing that, but we just like needed to keep moving, and I needed the portages to be done as fast as possible. So like Kit and Emily are like finagling stuff, and I'm just like at the if you remember where we had to take out and there was that rope, this I feel like is a pro tip, but I took that rope and I wove it through the strap and I got to the top and I just levered it up. And Emily and Kit were like below, kind of like pushing and guiding, but I was just like, we're done. I'm like, we're done with these portages. And we just, yeah, we got the boat up as quickly, because there was no like good way to get those boats out of those like crevasses. So I was like, we're just doing this. We're going to be done
And
with
she
it.
just did it. Yeah.
For you. So I wanted, Chelsea, a couple of people have added comments here. Megan said she would have paid $500 if someone had had portage wheels at the takeout. Laura Comtoy from Burf Barf said ditto. And Chelsea weighed in and said, well, that's a shame because we couldn't use our portage wheels. They sat in our paddle bag. And so Chelsea, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, I want to just kind of hear from you, because Chelsea is with Team Soggy Tritons, and they are the ones who received the Spirit Award, you may recall. And the Spirit Award was because they just were smiling and amazing energy through the whole race, even when they found out they were not going to be able to do the paddle. So Chelsea, you all missed the paddle cut off by how much? It was not a lot, like 20 minutes or something.
It was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, we were pulling in, we saw the last team, we saw two teams putting in as we were riding up.
Yeah, I've experienced that in a race before, and it was heartbreaking because my team also were strong paddlers, and we were so looking forward to the paddle. And for you all, you had just come off a big bike with, you know, big chunky biking, and now you were told you had to bike to the takeout so that you could do more
biking. And go bike again. 3 bike legs in a row. But
so talk to us about how you all maintained your mojo through all that.
Oh, we had fun. We were trying to have fun the entire time. I was just going through the Smug Mug photos today, and literally everyone, like, we're just goofballs. We had a grand time. I don't know. And I think that's actually kind of why we aborted when we did in the race, because we wanted to end on a high note. And suffering just to suffer, kind of, yeah, we were just trying to have fun. And unfortunately, you know, we also were one of the few teams that had registered right when it opened, so we happened to get in, but we weren't a competitive team. So there's some guilt there, by the way, but we knew that we were just out there to have fun and have the experience.
Good deal.
So
was this a team? How often had you raced with your two teammates before? Like, had you all raced together?
Oh no, I mean, in rowing 20 years ago, like, Leah had never done an adventure race at all. This was her first. So yeah, we I don't want to say we snookered her into it, but she we're forever indebted to her for, 1, committing to it, and then 2, holding up to that commitment and actually doing it. So
did you tell her?
Yeah, we were out there to have fun and not ruin her. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you tell her it was a 30-hour race going into it?
Yeah, we were not going to lie to her.
I know a team who told their teammate at nationals. I remember a nationals where a woman on a team had kind of a meltdown halfway through the race. And she said, they told me this was a 6-hour race. The 2 guys she was racing with had told her it was a 6-hour race to get her to race nationals with them. Can you believe it?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we wanted to be friends with her afterwards. So like we tried to be very upfront.
And so you're in California. Are your 2 teammates in California as well?
No. Well, one of them is in the Bay Area, and I'm down in San Diego, and then the other one's in Austin. So we didn't train together either.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
but the one in Austin is the one that I had raced with a few times over the last couple of years. Liz and I got into adventure racing a couple of years together. A couple of years ago. Sorry. Of course, Eco Prime. Eco Prime. What am I saying? Eco Challenge on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Like,
gotcha.
A lot of people.
And so just for everyone to know, Chelsea is one of our Women of AR ambassadors. And so she's going to, we hope, be helping us grow the sport among women on the West Coast out in California. So we're super grateful to have you doing that. And thank you very much. And I look forward to getting to know you better in that role.
Thanks. If while I'm off mute then, Saturday, December 2nd, if anybody is anywhere near San Diego, if you're in California or Arizona, please come on out. We have a adventure training event for free. It's literally just the price of a one-day pass in this lagoon for your boat. It's on Meetup. Feel free to reach out to me if on Facebook or wherever if you want to come out for it.
Sounds like a great reason to travel to San Diego December 2nd. Okay, thanks,
Good
Chelsea.
weather.
Yeah, and the weather. Okay, so back to Feral Femmes. I want to know what lessons you learned or mistakes maybe that you made during this race that you feel like other people can learn from.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things is that we could have gone faster and we could have done more. I think we were able to race our race because we knew we were not going to clear the course, and because we knew early on, looking at all the navigation, like we knew that we were like, we can do this, like we can rock this. And I think now knowing like how I perform, which was definitely a big question mark at the start of the race, it turns out 30 hours isn't that long. And so we finished feeling great. I mean, we ran to the finish, we felt very strong, we had a blast the whole time. And I think we would have, the one thing that Kit and I were just debriefing before we hopped on was we took a long time at that paddle leg, the one where I thought that I had lost the dibbler and it was around my neck. We did not, the configuration in the canoe that we had planned as a team together wasn't right. And so we had to adjust that on the fly, kind of like pulling off into one of the sandbars. And so we had to adjust that. And because of that, anyway, I ended up in the front of the canoe, which was incredibly cold because we paddled into the night. And so by the time we got off that leg, I basically had after drop. So I was cold during it. I put layers on at one of the portages. And then when we got into the finish, I was like, or into the end of that paddle, into that TA before we got on the bikes, I was like shaking and a little delirious. We like ran and got food and we had a very leisurely TA there. But the thing that Kit and I were talking about is we should have communicated a little bit more in advance about that uphill bike, because we could have transitioned a lot faster and just gotten on the bike and been like, we're biking uphill, everything's gonna be okay. I think that's one thing that was, we were like, oh, if we knowing what we know now.
Yeah, I think I've run into this a few races that so I'm usually in the front of the boat. I was in the back this time and I was sweating the whole time because it was having to stern those boats were something. So I know how cold it gets in the front of the boat, and there's been a few times that it would have been nice to have information about what's to come afterwards. And now I'm reflecting on it a little bit more. I wish that I had looked to see and be able to tell Ashley we are going to go uphill right away. Yeah, because being cold and on a bike, if we were going downhill or going into the night without any hills, she would have kept getting cold. And so we managed that appropriately, but yeah, we could have done better there. And I'm taking that with me.
It's the only time I'm happy to know that I'm going to be going uphill on a bike.
Yeah.
After a cold paddle. So I want Anna, if you don't mind, to chime in, because I know that for Feral Femmes, I imagine that part of the issue in terms of time management and knowing how fast you were going to be, you all hadn't raced together as a team of 3 before. So that's a little bit of an unknown. And Anna chimed in on what Rib Mountain does to help them with time management. Anna, you want to talk a little bit about because your team obviously has been racing together for a long time and you've got your time management pretty dialed in. Do you mind to talk about that?
Yeah. I just had messaged in the chat before that after every race, and we've been racing together for probably 20 years now, I think. So we'll just figure out after the race what our average trek pace, foot pace, and paddle pace were. Write down this was in November, it was snowing, or this was only 6 hours versus like this was a 24-hour race, or those kind of things. And then over the years, we've just averaged those together. So when we're doing our race planning and mapping the morning of, we've got our, okay, so we're paddling. It's probably going to be, we know it's downstream. This is our downstream paddle pace in these yellow banana boats, which we've raced, I think, 100 times in. So like, it helps to know that they also have a max hull speed, and it doesn't matter how hard you paddle, those boats are never going to go any faster than they're ever going to go. So it just helps to factor in like, okay, we know we've got like 50K on bike, it's all going to be single track. So this is about how long it's going to take. This is our slow estimate time versus our fast estimate time. And so then I'll write down, I've got like a little orienteering like case that I wear on my forearm, and I'll write down like the little details from all the race instructions. And so I'll put trek, 12K, starts at this time, ends at this time, our fast estimate, slow estimate, and then I'll put all the CP clues. And then kind of just have that on my forearm, just ready to go. So we know, okay, we should be to the paddle by 5 p.m. We should be done with it. If we're not, this is what we need to cut. So it just kind of helps but as much as we do that, and as much as it helps, it didn't really help in this race. I think we should have planned to be able to finish that whole last trek. And I think we underestimated ourselves, or maybe overestimated that final trek, and didn't get everything, and we should have. But in hindsight, hindsight's 2020. But yeah, that's typically what we do.
Yeah, and so Anna's talking about in orienteering, they're clue sheet holders or controlled description holders. You can find those online. They're basically like a little, 2 pieces of plastic, and you slide a sheet of paper between them, and then they've got elastic that goes around your arm. So there are a few different vendors that sell those online, but if you Google orienteering clue sheet holder or controlled description or whatever, you'll be able to find some of those online. Yeah, they're a great little, you can make one yourself, but they're nice with the elastic and all of that. So okay, so Feral Femmes, I want to know what you really nailed in the race, and like things that you want to replicate in the future that you feel like maybe surprised you or didn't surprise you, but that went really well.
Yeah, I mean, kids navigation was amazing. Like, I would say that there were no errors. Like, there were moments of pause where Kit just like verbally was like, this is all the information, and Emily and I are giving the information that we have, and then we were like, oh, little tiny correction here. There was nothing. And I think that's, I mean, as many folks on here probably say, amazing for morale, right? Amazing for morale, but also like, we were just so confident during the race in the choices that we made, and making like the decisions we made early on were very, so I just want to give props to Kit for her stellar navigation, I guess. And then yeah, I don't know, what do you think?
I think if I had to pick one that was really different in my experience, other than just the magic that goes with racing with other women, the freedom that I feel, and the lack of like imposter syndrome that I feel and stuff. Actually, I have to shout out to Birth Barf. I was listening to your podcast, and when you said that this race, one of you said, I felt less imposter syndrome than I have in any other race. And I really kind of internalized that myself as well. And I think that that's something that I feel free of when I'm racing with women, and that's not a knock on any of my male teammates by any means. It just is what it just is. So that was just a wonderful feeling for the race. And thinking about our pacing and our strategy, I come from a athletic training and sports medicine background, so I have a lot of information about evidence-based practice for training philosophy and training physiology. And we went into this with a goal of sustainability, and that sustainability for an endurance athlete is, you got to keep kind of this zone 2, you push into zone 3, zone 4 training, your heart rate gets up too high, you get into glycolysis, blah, blah, blah. Like we could have another conversation around that. But so I have struggled to be able to stay in that sustainable pace, racing with other people and racing with this team. We stayed sustainable, and it didn't mean that I hadn't, I had a lot more to give, but it just felt really great to be able to say, yes, this is what it's like to be able to tap into your aerobic capacity at a level that keeps you feeling great and keeps you sustained throughout the whole time. So
Yeah.
we there was never a time that we were pushing anybody into a red line or red zone. It wasn't part of our race goals. And I think that was really instrumental in us having fun, but also being able to keep moving and progressing.
Yeah, and make choices like when we knew that we could go a little harder, like on the as many of you remember, I'm sure, that hike a bike section, and that I called it a waterfall, and Kit was like, what are you talking about? But that little, basically it was pretty unrideable. You could not ride up that, I would say. And so I feel like had such a great, like, we felt great. It was not fun, but we felt great on it. And as Emily and I always say, like, we could be having more fun, but we're not having a bad time. And so I feel like we pushed it over that. Then we knew we had to come downhill. There were just places where when we needed to dial it up, we could dial it up, but it was never in that too hard bucket. We were not redlining. Our heart rates were still very chill, which I think is important. It is important for female athletes in a very specific way, in the way that our body metabolizes things. And I think sometimes that's lost on, if you've ever, who do we love that says women are not small men?
Stacy Sims.
Yeah. Sims. So, and I think like we just used a lot of the knowledge and wisdom on our team. Like Emily's been working with nutritionists, and like we just all brought different things, and we just made really good choices to feel great and obviously this race, a lot of things just worked out. Sometimes that doesn't happen on the course, but a lot of things did work out really well for us. And we made good choices, and those choices panned out. I will tell you, we pulled a checkpoint today, and I navs to it, and we were like, let's, for fun, pick a different route. So the route we had chosen going to CP, what was it?
41, maybe?
41, I think. And we had basically chosen the relief. We found a trail. We stayed on that trail basically until we hit the elevation that we wanted. We changed it. We cut in at the elevation we wanted to go to. But anyway, oh, this is sweet. Yes.
43.
43 is the one. Okay, 43 is the one. And so we went up that little, well, actually, Kit, you nabbed initially to it. So do you want to say what we did?
Well, initially we were able to stay on one of those spurs that was west northwest from 39. So from 39, we stayed on the west northwest spur, and it was a lot of. And then we went due west because I wanted to take us up where there was a lot of relief instead of going, yeah, exactly. Yep. And then we kind of followed that around, and we approached the CP from the west side. And that was relatively steep too at sometimes. But then Ashley and I were like, let's see what it would have been like going up the spur, the same spur, but kept going, and then see how steep that was.
So yeah, and so one of the things
so we just did that today.
So we did that. We took a bearing, and we were like, wouldn't it be fun? Because sometimes Kit and I have this debate, and we know the answer, but not everyone always agrees with us. Like, choosing a route that suits your strengths does not always mean taking a bearing and heading directly at it. As we all know, attack point is essential. And so taking the shorter route isn't always shorter sometimes. And so we today, on our little pick me up, took a bearing, and we got cliffed out. There was cliffs there that were not on that. So we got stuck. We got stuck there. We had to come down around. We did a lot of elevation. It was much less fun. The vibes were not as good. And yeah, we were like, wow, thank goodness we didn't do this in the race, because that would have been a really poor, but Kit had already aced it on the nav and said, this is a solid choice. This is a better attack point for what we want to be accomplishing in terms of being on foot, and choosing a route that's,
and that kind of
not going to
elevation
tank
can
everyone.
just hurt the legs too for later on. And
yeah.
There were a lot of cliffs hiding between those contour lines in this area for sure. So what your all's last answer, I've got like 4 different questions I've jotted down. So I'll try to do the ones that are sort of quick, easy first. So do you all wear heart rate monitors on your watches, or?
No, general sense of.
We don't. We just know.
I take mine a lot.
Yeah, we know how we feel. So it was a lot by feel.
Well, feel, but also if I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody, like if I'm having a conversation with Ashley and she is not able to get more than 4 words out, I know she's way too high. Like we need to be able to have a
Yeah.
conversation, and that could be like a little struggle, but as long as she can get phrases in,
Yep.
then I'm happy, depending on where we are.
Yeah, and I will say that if there is one thing I said during this race, it was, how's everyone doing? How's the pace? Like, how are we, like, just making sure, because I have been in places and races where I know the pace is too fast, but I will not slow down. And then that tanks me later on in the race, or it's a high interest loan, Kit and I always say, like going out too hard, starting too fast, burning those matches early. We did not, like in this 30 hours, we were like burning no matches until the last, like we wanted to be very strategic about those high inputs and where we were going to put those out on the course. So I think that's.
Did you all do any towing? I know you shared some gear, but did you all tow at all?
We did.
Not as much.
Yeah, we only
Just up the
towed.
notch road.
Yeah,
That's
at the notch. So the one thing, my one thorn of the race is I did get incredibly nauseous in the witching hours of the morning, which I think is to be.
Which means you're an overnight racer.
Yeah, which
right?
Abby
Those of
Purkis
us-
was like, Abby Purkis, our dear friend who we love, was basically like that every time. Like every time. Evan from Strong Machine was like, I vomit every single race. And I was like, that is horrible. I am not gonna vomit every race, but so that was one. Going up the notch, feeling nauseous and being in that biking position was a little bit uncomfortable. And so Kit did at the tail of that climb, Kit put me on tow, which was really lovely, although I could not stay out of the center of the road, which was a small problem, but we worked on it. So that was pretty helpful for me.
And so then another question that we see very frequently in the group, especially from newer racers, is how many calories per hour? And obviously that's a very individualized thing, but like people, if you're a new racer, a lot of times they don't know, should I be taking in 100 calories per hour or 1,000 calories per hour? So like even the broad range that we probably have among all the women on here, even that is helpful for a beginner to at least begin to think about how much food they should carry.
Yeah, the evidence is kind of suggesting that a range that is doable for our GI tracks, especially if you're trying to get up to that zone 3, like high zone 2, is about 100 to 400 calories worth of glucose or of sugars. And so that's kind of what we're seeing in like Tour de France right now. They're seeing a lot of Tour de France riders, getting all the way up to that 400 calories or like 100 or more grams of carbohydrates. That is really high end that you should never try until you've worked your way up there with progressing your GI track. I think, when we started racing, it was we were doing more like 100 calories an hour. And interestingly, I didn't get this nausea, but I also had very clearly low energy availability. And especially with women, just if we can be eating more, we're going to be much more effective powerhouses.
Yeah.
So if you can train your body to be taking in more like 1 to 250, like sometimes I do 3 to 350 and I feel nauseous afterwards. Calories, and it is very individual.
And isn't it scientifically proven that peanut M&Ms are the best thing to eat on the paddle?
Easily. Yeah.
I'm a big Sour Patch Watermelon girl and
Yeah.
Skittles, so that's my snack bag combo that I'm a big fan of. But I will say that I survived and thrived this race off of scratch, because I did get so nauseous and being on the move, like just because one of our things was like we want to keep moving always. The scratch was amazing. I had a bike bottle filled. I had my 2 water bottles here that I then put a Noon in later, and that was so easy. And I did overdo it on the amount of scratch I tried to squeeze into one of those, but
so the scratch there's a high energy, high calorie, I forget what it's called, but
it has like a super name, like it has like a specialty name.
And
it's
so
like
3 or 4 scoops is like 230 calories. And so that's kind of what we were counting out for Ash every hour. We were trying to do about 230 calories for Ash. And so that's just like the way that Scratch has suspended their fuel means that we could actually process more of the calories. There's like better ways to suspend the fructose and the glucose, some of the simple sugars. So there is a place for these, you know, high-end performance-based fuels anyway.
Yeah, and the perk of that I found, as I was incredibly nauseous, is that I just drank a little bit throughout that 30-minute period. So when Em said the timer went off, I started drinking and I just like made my way through it, and it was much better than trying to scarf down any of the physical real food I had, which I do think would have
And we tossed
potentially made me vomit, which would have been like a bet. Like I was not going down the vomiting road. So
we tossed some BCAA powder, so that's
Mhm.
branched chain amino acids. So if you're not getting fuel that includes protein, protein is absolutely necessary for us, but it also fills us so that now we're not having the energy availability from the glucose that we need. So having some BCAAs, we have practiced with BCAAs and found that they're really helpful. And there's a
Mhm.
powder that you can get BCAAs, and I just threw in all of our Scratch to make sure that we were getting those. Those
Yeah.
are the building tools for the muscle.
Yeah, I would
and
say that
tissue.
this race and my food strategy changed. Every 12-hour race I now will be totally different than I've ever raced, because I know now for a shorter race what is going to be like the perfect amount and how to not carry as much. Like I carried too much, we had too much food. But I just didn't know. Like I knew I was going to need a lot of calories, and I was just nervous about not having something, not being able to keep up on food. So
I just to close on this one, I know that Bend Racing is touting their 4-hour fuel, and I think they also have, you know, tried to figure out how to manage a lot of these needs into something that is easily digestible. So
yeah,
we just go the Scratch route just because that's
Yeah.
what we've
we
used.
like it. Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious too, if anyone on the call won some of the product from Ultraverse Supplements. They are a new sponsor to USARA Nationals, and I'm really curious to know if any of you won that and you try it. We'd love to have your feedback on it to decide if that's a partnership that we want to keep carrying forward. I mean, it looks like an awesome company, and they've put a lot of research and science into the product. So we're really kind of curious to know if people like it, right? It's fine to say it will serve the purpose and meet your needs, but if it tastes terrible or whatever, then, you know, nobody wants to use it. So we'd love to have some feedback. If any of you won that and you try it in your training, let us know how it works for you. Okay, so the last question I've got, because this came up in a race I did yesterday with a fairly new racer. She's raced a few times, and this was the longest race she had, so we had a great time. And she wanted to know how I learned to navigate. And it's been so long ago that it really taxes my memory to sort of remember how I learned. I'm wondering, Kit, do you remember how you learned to navigate, and like what advice you can share for women in the group about how they can learn to navigate? Like I know now how I would tell someone, but trying to think back to how I learned, I'm really not sure.
My first adventure race was in 2007. I did 12-hour races only for like almost like 5, 6, 7 years. And I was the navigator, and I made so many mistakes, and I love to learn from them. And I just love maps and compasses. So I really I went for it, to be honest. And I was racing with people that were in it for fun, as well, you know, as well as competition. So we wanted to learn from it. And then what really helped me take the next step, one of my teammates that I started racing 24 hours with, Scott Cox, he is a expert navigator as well. He's done a lot of Rogaines, a lot of orienteering stuff, and he started teaching me a lot more about attack points. And so thinking where or how to best approach a CP based on some of the things we just talked about with the map. Like, do we want to go the steepest? Do we want to try to follow a re-entrant? Do we want to try to, and where like a backstop might be to tell us if we've gone too far. I would say those are probably two of the most important things that I could recommend, is starting to learn to incorporate some of that information. So how do I want to get to the CP and look at all the different, I mean, there's a million different ways to get there. What might work best for me? how to keep in touch with the map while I'm doing it, whether it's by altitude or by following a stream or following the reentrant, really trying to stay in touch with the map. And then what happens, what am I going to see if I get too far or when I get there?
Did you use your altimeter during this race?
Oh, absolutely. I did a number of GMARA races without an altimeter, and that taught me how to navigate in a different way. But once we started using altimeters, I mean, that information is incredibly important. It's interesting going to a race like Wilderness Traverse, where there's no altitude to speak of. So it's a very different style, but the altimeter can change the experience.
Yeah, and one thing that's worth noting, people might remember that the maps change between meters and feet. And so we had actually 2 altimeters running, one in meters and one in feet, which was helpful because it meant we didn't have to deal with changing the altimeter in the moment. And then also we always had to, because it was also the barometric pressure was weird during that race. If folks remember, it did get really windy and it got a little, so having 2 running was helpful because we could then kind of like cross-reference and be like roughly.
Yeah. So Anna, thanks a lot. Anna has popped a photo into the chat. You see her clue sheet holder there and also the little notes. Man, that's just like, that's meticulous. That's putting in the effort. Like, I'm too lazy to do that at the start of a race, but if you want to, be a top 10 team, that's the sort of thing you do. That's super smart. Thanks a lot, Anna, for sharing that with us.
I love looking at that because I'm a big like the meticulous, discerning diligence that goes into it. Yeah,
yeah. And it kind of goes with what I tell people frequently when we're talking about race strategy and how you figure out what you're going to try to cover at the start of the race is do the math, right? So if I've got a row game, the first thing I do is I sit down and I count the number of points on the north side of the hash house and I count the number of points on the south side of the hash house. And then I add those up and, it's surprising, I think, for a lot of beginners to know like how much math is involved in figuring out what you can do, knowing how fast you can go on foot. How fast do you paddle? I don't know. Well, go out on a lake and figure it out. How fast do you bike? So those are all numbers and you've really got to crunch the numbers if you want to have a good idea of how quickly your team is going to move over the course of 30 hours in different disciplines. So yeah, that's awesome to see that. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? We've been a little bit over an hour. Is there anybody else who wants, like, some of what we've talked about has raised something that you feel like would be nice to contribute, something that went really well for your team or really poorly for your team that other people can learn from? I'm happy to sort of open the floor if anybody wants to hop on. No, not necessarily. Okay, that's all right. We can wrap it up. Yeah, and we can continue the discussion online as well. I will post the link. So we've recorded this. I'm going to stop recording now, actually.